everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I am Michael,
And I'm Molly.
and we are here today to talk about jury duty, which is not what you think it might be. It is a brand new show on Amazon Freevee that we will see if it can qualify as a reality show. I think that's an interesting topic to actually discuss today. But before we do that, we want to get into some news. So the first news story here that we wanted to discuss is Nick and Danielle from Love is Blind season 2 have gotten into a little bit of a feud with Nick Viall due to the remarks on his podcast regarding the allegations that Nick and Danielle, among other ex Love is Blind contestants, have made against the show. And Nick Viall on his last podcast this week really went in on them for those allegations. And Molly, I know you're a big Nick Viall fan. What
Yes.
are your thoughts on what he had to say about it? And I know we talked a little bit about the allegations themselves last week, but kind of what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. I am a big Nick Viall fan. I love his podcast. I love listening to his Ask Nick episodes and also the reality TV side of it when he does recaps and Bachelor stuff and Love is Blind. But for this, I think he took a stance that was way too harsh in terms of like how he was coming at Nick and Danielle for saying that they're just in this for the fame, which like I get like can be part of it. Like, yeah, it's nice to have that kind of limelight again if it kind of went away. But Nick, I think, was just attacking them too hard. And this, like, I'm always usually going to stand with Nick in certain situations, but for this one, I do think he was in the wrong. In terms of like, I was seeing a lot of videos being like Nick is a bully, which everyone likes to say he's a bad person, which I don't agree with. Like, I think he's a really nice person. I just don't think this particular moment was his best. And even his co-hosts or like the producers from the show who he like or from his podcast, like they were even trying to push back against him, and then he even came back at that. So I know he probably knows he was in the wrong too, but he just wanted to stick with his opinion on that. So we'll see how it all goes down. It's drama right now, so we'll see what happens. But what
Yeah.
about you?
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think, I go back and forth with Nick. I feel like I probably agree with him 50% of the time on things he says. But yeah, with this, it's funny because I feel like initially, because you were the one who actually sent me the link to a clip from it, and initially just kind of hearing just like the kind of one sentence recap of the fact that they started a donation page and that he was kind of calling them out for that when I first heard it, I was like, yeah, I don't know that they need to make a donation page for something like this. Because, probably
Mm.
a lot of the fans that are going to contribute to that have a lot less money than the two of them do. But I think once I actually heard the context of it and everything that he was saying, it was way too far. He was on a completely different show. And so I know that probably some of the there are some similarities in the production of those two shows, and maybe some of the claims that the two of them made and others made against Love is Blind also apply to The Bachelor, and
Yeah.
maybe some don't though. And really, he has no way of knowing that other than his experience on a completely different show with a completely different production company. And he was kind of saying things like, oh, you need to prove it in order, that there's no food. And I don't know how they would prove that to him, really, other than production company admitting it. I don't know how they could possibly do that. And there are certain things to kind of play devil's advocate that, I Danielle was saying that he was making fun of her suicide attempt, which I don't think he was. I think if you listen to the context of that one sentence, I
Yeah.
don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was actually probably kind of sticking up for her. I don't know that that was made very clear. But I don't, that one part of it, I don't think that he was doing. And I don't think he would ever do. But overall, I totally agree. I felt kind of bad for Amanda, I think is his one of the producers' names, who was kind of the one who was sticking up for Nick and Danielle during that. And I do agree with a lot of what she was saying and felt kind of bad for her that the other three were I don't want to say ganging up on her, but she was kind of the only one sticking up for them.
Yeah, I don't think like people were saying the stuff about when you're mentioning the suicide stuff with in terms of Danielle saying that Nick was not in support of that. Like I think or like saying that what he was saying about that, I don't believe that he was against that anyways, like or refuting that opinion because he's very much a mental health advocate in all those regards and all that stuff. So I definitely don't think that was his intention at all in terms of that. But in terms of like the actual living conditions, I agree that he was on totally different show, so it's way different for what he had experienced versus what Love Is Blind was experiencing. So we'll see. That's just this lawsuit is just messy. Like
Yeah, well, and
I don't know.
the one part of it that I actually do think is very I've seen a lot of people on both sides of it, I feel like, is, whether contestants on reality shows are employees. And whether they should receive at least a minimum wage salary to be on these shows. And kind of see both sides of that. I don't necessarily think that is the main issue that I have with the allegations on the show. I feel like that's one of the lower ones because that's something that they know going into it when they sign the contract. They know how that, whether they're making anything at all, or and that's something they agree to. And so that's I don't really care as much about, to be honest. I know that was a big topic they'd have discussed on the podcast. The main thing for me is the lack of food, the lack of water, the lack of sleep, the
Mhm.
just kind of basic needs that are seemingly might not be met. And that's not something that anyone going into it would ever, really agree to if they ever thought that was a possibility. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they discuss it in this week's podcast, what he says about it, if he apologizes at all, or if it's brought up even.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens in terms of that
Yeah,
because I feel like there has to be some sort of closure in her. Like I don't think he can just leave it. Like at this point, like it's blown up a lot that he doesn't want that image. In my opinion, like I don't think he would want that continuing on. I'm
no,
saying
I
like, oh,
I
like you can't move on from that without apologizing, in my opinion. So
right.
we'll see.
Well, keeping it in the Bachelor world a little bit, the next
Yeah.
news story here is that Becca Kufrin and Thomas Jacobs are having their first child.
Yes,
They,
some happier news there.
yeah, definitely. For those of you who might not know, Becca was originally on Ari's season of The Bachelor, where some controversy occurred that she was originally the one who won, in quotes, and was engaged to him before he changed his mind and ended up going with the runner-up Lauren, who they are still now together. Becca then became the Bachelorette and is no longer with the guy she chose there, Garrett. Thomas was on Katie's season, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
he
he
was
was
a
kind of the
villain.
villain,
Yeah.
right? Of that season, before he went on the following season of Paradise, and Becca was also on that season, and that's where they met. And now, a couple years later, they are having their first child. So, Molly, what do you think of them as a couple? Are you happy for them?
Yeah, I'm really happy for them. When I first saw them on Paradise, I was honestly a little shocked at that pairing. But then the more that I've seen them together, like on social media and all that stuff that like we can see from what their relationship looks like, it seems very like very healthy and really good fit for both of them. So I'm really happy. Also, another side note was that she proposed to him
Oh, that's
first.
right. I forgot about that.
So yeah, after they came back from Paradise, they were dating more, and then she proposed. So that was like a, all right, like changing up the dynamics here. Good for her. But then he also ended up proposing. But I thought that was a good tell to their relationship of like how strong they were that she felt confident to propose to him. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm happy they're not married yet, but like they are gonna get married. So happy for them to have their first kid together. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be exciting, another bachelor baby. But I loved Becca and I loved her season of The Bachelorette. I just think she's a really down to earth person overall. Like, I feel like we don't know Thomas as well in my like from what we've seen because he had that villain edit from Katie's season, and then he had a redemption arc when he came to Paradise, and then like we didn't really get to see much drama in terms of that. So I guess that's why we don't really know so much about him now because there wasn't that much to show if there wasn't drama related to him anymore. But I think that they're gonna last. I mean, now they're having a baby together, so I hope they do. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I feel like I remember hearing about them as a couple during when that Paradise season was filming that I assume it was Reality Steve had spoiled that the two of them were together during filming. And I remember just seeing all the comments of people saying like stay away from her, like oh no, I bet she doesn't even know that, his reputation from that season, and she'll come back home and watch it and break up with him, or just people thinking that there's no way this is going to last. And then, if I remember right, they actually broke up in the finale of that
Yeah.
season, and then they got back together afterwards. So that's really interesting, that a
Yeah, I
couple
never know
would.
how much those like breakups really mean anything in terms of when people leave Bachelor in
Yeah,
Paradise
it
because
just
it
kind
could
of
have
means they
been
don't
like an
actually get
hour.
engaged.
And then like an hour later they're back together. Like, you
Right.
know.
Right. And I also think sometimes couples that aren't necessarily ready to get engaged but still want to stay together might just kind of end it for the show so they don't have to get engaged and then decide to just date afterwards.
Yeah, same thing with Noah and Abigail that happened. Like, I don't feel like they really broke up, but they had that
Right.
dramatic breakup and then they were back and now they're
Well,
really
and we
strong.
see it
They're
on
not
Love is
engaged yet.
Blind, taking it back to
Yeah.
Love is Blind, some couples that like Micah and Paul this past season who broke
Mhm.
up and then decided to date again, try it out, and a lot of times that doesn't really work, but it's interesting, and so yeah, I'm happy for them.
Yeah, the
Um,
pictures are really pretty for their announcement for back then.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's fun. Yeah, should we go
Uh,
into the next topic?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Jeff Probst, who is the host of Survivor, did an interview that he does every week with Entertainment Weekly's Dalton Ross, where he talks about what's going on in the what happened in the last episode, and kind of teases what's to come later in the season. And something that he brought up is that there's a possibility based on the last few seasons' jury decisions, or really, I guess, just the last most recent one in particular, where the jury has really rewarded the fire making challenge to a degree that is not normal based on how long that's been going on, really. In the past, nobody's expected anyone to go in there and, if they win immunity, and make the fire themselves until last season.
Yeah.
That was a huge factor. And so, something that was brought up, I think Dalton was the one who actually suggested it, was that the jury might uh, want to, or not want to, but it would be beneficial to them to watch the challenges when they happen. Because right now, for those of you who don't know, the jury on Survivor only sees the tribal councils once they're eliminated. They go to tribal councils and they're able to watch those and nothing else. They hear what happened from other people once they're eliminated. I'm sure they talk at nauseum about everything that's happened. But as far as what they get to see with their own eyes, is only tribal councils. And that's been the case for 44 seasons now.
Yeah.
But what that might happen is that, when people win immunity over and over and over again, it's really impressive to those who can actually see them do it. But to the jury who didn't actually see it happen, it might not be that big of a factor. So, my question to you is, do you think that that is something that would create a better, more well rounded decision? Or will it make people factor in the challenges too much almost? Would it kind of go the other direction where physical threats are the only people who ever win?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I do think that fire making shouldn't be that main, like, okay, you made the fire, now you can win. Like that, in my opinion, like there's so much that leads up to that.
Mhm.
And all of the challenges and all of the strategic aspects of the game and just, like, making it there is just difficult on its own, so if it's kind of, like, on the jury decision, if it's mostly tainted in certain regards, then it's not as much, like, when you look back at the whole season, like, that maybe not the strongest player. So, I definitely think that it would be interesting to have the jury going to those challenges and seeing the competitions there, but also the challenges don't mean everything. Also, like, I mean, like, there's so many aspects too that they still wouldn't get to see, which you get to hear about, like, in their own testimonies and stuff like that, but I feel like that could add another layer that could be interesting to see. Like, I definitely think it's worth a test to see what would happen during that. Like, I don't know if that would continue every year afterwards, but I do think that would be really interesting. What about you?
I disagree. I hate this idea. I think that the challenges are one of the least important parts of Survivor and Big Brother
Yeah,
and all that in terms of determining a winner. I think it's impressive, sure, but I think it's almost more impressive to survive and get to the final three without winning immunities and without ever being safe
that's
and
true.
having to
Yeah.
rely on that. I think that the way to fix it is to get rid of the fire making.
Okay, yeah, that's another option.
I wish that we would. I don't even care so much anymore about going back to a final two.
Mhm.
That's been so long at this point that that's not a big thing to me. I just want to get rid of the fire making. I think that we've gotten so far away from the original concept of the show, which is going from 16 to 15 to 14, etc., all the way to two people. And every time it's a vote that eliminates someone. And now we've gotten to the point where the last vote is at final five, where it used to be at final three.
Yeah,
And I think that the more that we keep tweaking and changing things, the further away the show gets to what it originally was, which was such a perfect concept to start off with. And I just wish that the producers would trust their cast more than they do to create an entertaining season and not relying on 5 million idols, 5 million twists, and every episode. I mean, this season, which we'll talk about in a few weeks when it's closer to ending, um, we didn't get a jury vote until like 3 weeks into the jury phase. And it was kind of crazy. And I hope that they're listening. I doubt they are, but I hope that the fan reaction to this season, the first part of the season at least, because I do think that these last few episodes have been really good and the cast has been great. But I hope that the reaction has, I don't think they've started filming. Yeah, oh, I guess maybe they have started filming the next two seasons, but I hope that it started late enough that they were able to factor in the way that fans feel about all the twists that have happened. But we'll see if that ever happens. It will be interesting to
yeah,
see how
because
much
I mean, the
changes in.
physical aspect I feel like is a big part. Like, a lot of contestants think like, "Oh, we gotta get out the physical threats because then they want a better chance at, like, winning that immunity and getting that next step." But it's interesting, like, with now, like, even people who don't win challenges can still win, so it's like, you don't know always, like, what the case is in terms of that. Like, there's every season is different in terms
Right.
of, like, what's gonna happen or what the outcome could be. So maybe, yeah, maybe it's not a solution is for the jury to go to those challenges, but maybe it is to remove the fire making in terms
Yeah.
of, like, making it more so even in a way, but, like, I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. No. Well, we will see. I'm sure that news will start kind of slowly coming out about anything that's changed on these next two seasons as they end filming. Usually, little things. There's Survivor is one of those shows that where there's really not a lot of spoilers that come out, but there are sometimes little twists and things like that that will trickle out as filming happens. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, we'll see.
Last two, just really quick news stories, really nothing to discuss, but just to kind of bring up, we got trailers for two shows this last week, Real Housewives of Orange County and The Kardashians. Both came out with their trailers. Those two seasons both start. I think OC starts at the end of May, or no, beginning of June. Kardashian starts at the end of May. So might potentially talk about either of
Yeah.
those.
I actually
Um,
haven't watched the Kardashians in a while, but I used to. So it
mhm.
might be a good time for me to get back into it.
Yeah, well, it's one of those shows that I don't necessarily usually watch, every episode week to week, but
Yeah.
well, every so often if, they talk about something interesting, I'll watch at least a clip.
Yeah.
So
It's just entertaining to see overall
yeah,
what goes on.
it is. They've been doing this for
So long.
15, 16 years now. And so is Real
16.
Housewives of Orange County. I think that started in
Yeah.
2006.
That'll be good too.
Um, and last one, sad, Len Goodman, judge of Dancing with the Stars, has passed away. Um,
Mhm.
incredible that he was with this last season. He was a judge on this most recent season that was just at the end of last year, and he was there since Carrie Ann and Bruno have been. I mean, it's truly incredible the fact that Dancing with the Stars kept their three original judges from 2005 until
Yeah.
2022. That's unheard of in the world of reality TV to have three judges last that long on a show like this. So rest in peace, Glenn.
I
We'll
know.
miss
It
him.
was so sad I saw that news and I didn't even know that he had cancer. Did you see that he
I
had bone
didn't
cancer?
either. I had
Yeah.
no idea. I mean, I knew that he had already said that he was not going to be on next season, but I really thought that was just due to his age and how long he'd been doing it.
I
But
know.
I had no idea. But it's very sad.
Yeah. But he
Well,
did very well as a judge, and I loved seeing him as a
oh
judge
yeah.
on the show. So hopefully they're gonna have to give him some sort of legacy or something on the show next season to honor his memory.
Oh, and
But
I love that they actually kind of already did that.
yeah,
It's if this had to happen. I mean, of course, I'm glad that we kind of got the tribute to him while he was still around to see it.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of times that only happens when it is too late for them to be a part of it, and so I'm glad that he was able to end on such a triumphant note where we really got to celebrate him on on the last episode.
definitely. Well, should we get into jury duty?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to kind of explain the concept of the show first before we get into more details?
Yeah, so overall, the concept was really interesting, in my opinion, to hear that out of everyone in the cast, only one person was not an actor. So everyone as part of the cast is an actor, pretty much scripted or improv related to it. And then one person who's on the jury doesn't know what's happening. And he's just put in this situation thinking that this is a real jury, real things happened, and going about the whole process of the jury with the judge and going through like their living situations, like they can't have phones, which also is interesting. We can talk about like how they got to that part, but how it's just like pretty much like this very secluded environment and he's like going along with everything and totally fine. But it's really interesting to see like this kind of concept of a show because I thought it was really funny and I think it was really well executed overall. I don't know your thoughts overall were on this show, but I really enjoyed watching it and seeing Ronald, who is the one person who's not the actor here, his reactions and just how great he was in the show. And he had no idea that any of this was fake, which it's also a big win for the show. Like I feel like they could have casted someone and had someone be like very judgmental or just very not the kind of person that they would want to have in this kind of role. So I was interested to see and I would consider this to be more of like a reality show because of the fact that the one guy didn't know anything and like he even quoted at one point like this is like a reality show. I don't know if you remember that line, but I
I
was like,
do,
wow, like
yeah,
it
yeah.
really is because of how this is kind of real but not real at the same time.
Right. No, I agree. I loved it. I thought it was really funny. It almost felt to me when I was watching it, I had to remind myself that it was a scripted show. Like,
Yeah.
or not fully, but that the things that were happening were pre-planned generally, except for Ronald's reactions to everything. Um, because it was almost more like it was more like watching The Office or something than watching a reality show. But then you have to kind of remind yourself, oh yeah, no wait, no, these people are acting. um, so I yeah, I thought it was really funny. Ronald was great. I am still confused. I've tried to read so many articles about this of how exactly he got there and what he was told about it because apparently they found him on Craigslist. They put out an ad. I don't know if it was an ad for a documentary about jury duty, I guess is my understanding.
Yeah, so he knew it was gonna be filmed for a documentary,
Is
but
that
he
a
didn't.
thing that you can do with a real?
No, you're not allowed to do that. I mean, like, in my opinion, like, I don't think you're allowed, like, they also every episode, they preface by saying, like, you're not supposed to talk about the jurors aren't supposed
Right.
to talk to each other. So I guess Ronald just didn't know that that was the case, or he thought this was just supposed to be different because they're documenting it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was really interesting to see that he actually, like, did go along with it as much as, like, anyone could, basically.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like I just need more details on what exactly, like how he was so convinced that this was real and kind of what he was told in that critics. Because I didn't know jury duty was something you could just like volunteer for either. So I don't know. There's some questions there that I have, but overall, I loved it. I guess we kind of already talked about, was he a good choice for this role? I think he was. I think he was the perfect person for it. Almost as if he was scripted for it.
I
Like
know.
everything just fell into place perfectly, it seemed like. That they had planned for him. And it was really interesting too to watch in the last episode. They kind of go into more of the behind the scenes of what was happening during all of the moments throughout. And it was so interesting how they kind of had to pivot for certain things and how they had planned, if he reacts this way, then let's do this. If he reacts this way, if he gets angry about the cake moment, then, we'll bring in a new one. If he doesn't, then we won't. All this different stuff that I feel like has to make this so much more difficult as an actor than any other show that you could do where everything is scripted versus this where it is scripted, but we don't know how he's going to react and we have to make sure that he doesn't know that this is scripted.
Yeah, it was also interesting that he had to be the one to drink first in the Margaritaville before anyone
Right.
else could order or get a
Right.
drink,
That was funny.
just like how that worked as well. But yeah, I don't know, like, it's interesting because I mean, there's probably so much more behind the scenes that we didn't even they didn't show us. So I feel like there's so much that just went into each moment that we don't necessarily know, but it all executed very well. So
I
it was
agree.
great to watch.
Who were some of your favorite scripted characters besides Ronald?
Yeah, I love Todd. I thought he was so sweet. And it was also so sweet to see Ronald with Todd and how nice, like, he was to Todd, even though, like, Todd is like this quirky kid or guy that is, like, very nerdy, and they just, like, create this bond, and they go shopping, and, like, at that moment, like, I feel like they should have showed more of, like, the makeover of what happened.
Oh my
But
god, I
I just
loved
love.
the chair that he made
Yeah.
for himself. Oh my god, that was so
That part was so funny. But I think Todd really, really sold his character the most, in my opinion.
yeah, I agree. Um, I also love Todd. I think Jeannie, is that
Oh, I love
her
Jeannie
name?
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Noah as well. Were both great. And yeah, I think they all just did such an amazing job of selling their characters and making sure that it was crazy enough that he was questioning things a little bit, but not enough to where he would ever possibly think that it was all fake.
Yeah.
Like, because I feel like you want to put it in a situation where he's a little bit kind of not suspicious, but just kind of like this is really weird. Like, I can't wait to tell all my friends about this type of thing. But
Yeah,
not,
that's how he reacted to a lot of it, I feel like, and he even
yeah,
was like, "Oh, they need to make a movie about this because
right,
what's going on here is
exactly.
crazy."
Right. You want to kind of see how far you can push it.
Yeah, for sure.
um, let's see. So at the very end of this, it's revealed that he won $100,000. So my question is, because didn't seem to really be a criteria necessarily of
Yeah.
what would cause him to lose the $100,000. Which I don't think, even if there was, I don't think he would ever have come close to that. He seemed to react to everything, perfectly the way that they would have hoped he would, and to the point where, it seems like he's such an amazing person, the way that he reacted to everything and was so calm and um but should there have been more of a criteria for that, do you think, in future seasons? Is that something that you would want for them to have?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know. I feel like I don't know how you could go through that without kind of winning.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what criteria would actually entail besides for like not being aggressive or like not like trying to like like just like outright like disagree with things, but I don't know how they really would set criteria for that. But I think it's an interesting point to like think about in terms of like would they potentially not gift it if it were so like bad or whatever the outcome could be. Um but because we've only seen one season, so it's like I can't really base it off of like what to expect necessarily because I don't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think my first reaction was to say yes, that I think there should be, because it just felt like it felt a little bit I don't know, like there was no suspense, I guess, as to whether he was going to. I feel like it would have maybe added something to be like, oh no, don't react this way, like you're gonna lose a point, or whatever, however they decided to do it, would be to kind of have some suspense along the way in terms of that. But I agree with you that how do you go through all that and then not give them the money? Like, to put them through all that for how long was it? Like 2 weeks almost the jury went for, I think,
Yeah.
and that. And to put them through all that and then not give them the money because they, reacted this way instead of that way in a situation that you put them in, that they didn't know that they were in. um, I agree. I don't know that there's really a way to do it that makes any sense. But it'll be interesting to kind of see if there is a future season of this and how they possibly could do it. Would it be jury duty again? Would it ever work again? And now that people are aware of
Yeah.
this
I
show?
feel like there's still enough of the population of people who wouldn't know what this is.
Yeah,
So I think there could be another season. But also, honestly, they could have already been filming, and we don't know
that's
something.
true.
They
That's
could have
that's
already
very
like I don't know when this was filmed, so they could have
right.
already started another season without this one airing yet. So maybe
That's
there was
true. I
already
hadn't
another
thought
season in
about
the
that.
works, but I honestly don't know that. We can research that. But
Right.
I feel like they could change the concept up in terms like maybe not jury duty, but something else. I don't even
Mhm.
know what they would do, but
Yeah, I don't
they
know. It's also
could.
hard because you call the show jury duty, so you kind of boxed yourself into that.
Yeah,
um,
that's true. So they kind of probably have to stick with that theme now. But I don't know how they would go about it if they would use like similar actors or bring it on different people or like how that would really continue if this is just brand new cast each season. I mean, they have to bring a new fake or like real person into it.
right.
But that would be really interesting to
They
see.
just do
Like,
it with Ronald again, so
yeah,
you
yeah,
notice
just
it.
bring Ronald back. That would be really funny. He's now getting so much fame
Oh
from
my
this stuff, like, it's
God,
great,
I
and he had no
know.
idea. I was watching, like, he on his TikTok, he posted or I don't know if it was his TikTok, but I saw he did a cameo for someone and was saying, like, this was his first cameo, and, like, it was
Oh,
so sweet.
it's funny. I
But,
know. It's like
yeah,
this.
so we'll see, like, he's, like because he really got that hero edit and, like, he deserves it
which
because he
deserved.
was
Yeah,
amazing.
right. I know. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the only reason why I say it could be tough to do it again is just because even if the person, I feel like it's such a risk because there's no way to know if the person watched the first season until you put them in that situation because you can't tell them about it or else they're going to know what it is. And so I don't know how they would pick someone without, unless you kind of just have to guess and hope based on other personality traits of theirs or, whether they say they watch a lot of TV, maybe, or I don't know how to even figure that out. But I can't imagine going through all that process of putting everything together with the show, and then day one they're like, "Oh yeah, I watched that show. I know what this is." So I don't know how to do it, but we'll see.
That yeah, because maybe they would start filming it and then they would be like, "Oh, just kidding, we can't film this anymore if you know what happened." Like,
Right, because then you
I
put
don't
everything together.
know.
I mean, I guess maybe you
Yeah.
just get a different hero and do it again with the same group. I don't know. I don't know, but we will see. Any last thoughts before we get off here, Molly?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the show overall, and I think we'll see what happens, but I'm hopeful there could be another season. I think that there are enough people who wouldn't know. Maybe they would even go to, like, a different country or something and bring someone else, like, in who maybe didn't see it if they weren't living in the US. I don't know if it's
That's
probably
a good,
global or,
yeah.
like, national or around the world,
I
but,
think it
like,
is, but it
if it's
probably doesn't
international.
have a
Yeah.
large following in other
Yeah,
countries. Like
so I'm
Amazon,
sure they
I
can
think
find
is.
someone. I have hope because I really wanna see another
I
season.
know, I do too. I hope so too, and it's been pretty popular, widely talked about. So I think as long as they are able to do it and find a way to, I think that they will.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this was fun getting to chat again. Our
Yeah.
second episode. Thanks for
Yes.
listening and thanks for following. If you followed us on Instagram, Let's Chat Reality, subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. And we'll chat with you guys next week.
Yes. Chat with y'all later.